Masechet Nazir Daf Kaf Vav. The Mishnah spoke about superfluous funds as follows. If a woman says, I'm a Nazira, and she allocated funds for her korbanot, and then the husband came and annulled her vow. And so now you have this money, what are we going to do with it? The Mishnah said it depends. If it was allocated specifically for each animal, I'll say this $300 altogether, and a person said 100 for chatat, 100 for olah, 100 for shilamim. In that case, each thing, since it's already allocated, has its own different law. That for chatat, you can't use, you can't just bring a chatat voluntarily, and it's sanctified. So you throw that money into the Dead Sea. That which is an olah, no problem. Bring a regular olah. That which is shilamim, also no problem. Bring a shilamim. The shilamim of a voluntary shilamim, and that of a nazir is a little bit different, and so the laws of that shilamim will be somewhat like the regular shilamim and somewhat like the nazir. Okay, good. Now, what if that money was not allocated? I mean, all the $300 in general was specified. This is going to be money that I'm going to bring for my korbanot, but it was not allocated. It was not specified that that is going to be for these three actual types. That the 100 is going to be for this, 100 for that. So since it's unallocated money, the Mishnah taught, well, then you can donate the money to the Bet HaMikdash, and it will be used for voluntary communal offerings. All right. So now here's the chidush. Even though part of that money is for chatat, and you can't just bring a chatat offering voluntarily, since it was unallocated, so it's all mixed up, that's okay. Even that chatat money, since it's not quite allocated for specifically chatat, it's just mixed in, you can use it. What's the source for that? According to the Yochanan, the source was a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, right? And so that's what the Yochanan said. This is a halacha. His words were, Amar mod halacha hi ben nazir. Good. Now we're going to ask a question about this. Vetu leka. Hold on. Is nazir the only case where superfluous, unallocated funds go to communal offerings? There is another case, and we're about to see. So we ask, Vetu leka, vatanya, ushad hayave kinin she batora, shefrishu ma'ot likinehem, rasa lavi behem hatat behema yavi, olat behema yavi, met vehulo ma'ot situmin yipulu lindava. We're talking about a case of someone who has to bring two birds, like a misora. When he's finished being purified, he brings two birds, one for a hatat and one for an olah, if he's poor. If he's rich, then he has to bring two animals. Okay, so someone who has to bring two kinim, and he separated money for his birds. Okay, so this money will be for my two birds. And then, let's say he got rich, and now he can afford an animal. So what should he do with that original money? So he can do whatever he wants. If he wants to use the money and buy an animal for a hatat, that's fine. If you want to use the money to buy an animal for an olah, that's also fine, because that money originally was designated for hatat and olah. So therefore, so he didn't allocate it, so it's all mixed together. You can use it for either one, and then whatever it is, he'll add extra money to buy for the difference in price and to buy the extra one. Now, if he dies, and he had this money that was unallocated. Okay, so different case. He's a misora, and he took money. He says, this will be for both of my birds. And then he dies, so now you can't use it. What are you going to do with it? So Yipulul Indava, then they go to communal offerings. Even though within that money is mixed hatat money, and hatat, you can't bring a hatat for voluntarily. Nevertheless, because they were situmin, because it was not designated that this $50 will be for a hatat, it was just mixed in, then it goes to communal offerings. So we see here another case that's just like the previous one. How come Rabbi Yochanan didn't tell us that this is also part of that oral tradition that permits it? And the answer is, you're right. Let's add to that oral tradition and say, Nazir and those who are required to bring a nest, a bird offering, that's in a similar case. Okay, good. So now we have two cases where we have this very special law that even something, money, that has within it korban hatat, mixture, if it's become superfluous, then you can use it for communal voluntary offerings. Now, why do you have to specify any cases at all? Why even say Nazir and Chave Kinin? Just say any time, right? So now we're going to present a case that is similar where we do not apply this rule. We're going to have a mixture with Chatat money, and you cannot use it when it's superfluous for voluntary offerings. Here we go. Ulapuke mehadetanya. Misha mechuyav hatat. V'amar harei alaycha ola. V'efrish ma'ot. V'amar harei elu lechovati. Someone was liable to bring a hatat. He violated Shabbat by mistake. Okay, he has to bring korban hatat. And besides that, he also made a separate vow to say, I'm going to bring a korban olah. So now he has two separate obligations, and one hatat, one olah. Now he designated money, and he said, this will be for my obligations, right? For all of them. Okay, so let's say he had $200, and that will include the chatat and the olah. Rasa lavi behen hatat behema lo yavi. Olat behema lo yavi. Here's the thing. Because he didn't designate which is which, so if he wants to use all of the money to bring the hatat, he cannot, because some of it's for the olah. And if he wants to use all the money for the olah, he cannot, because some of it is for the hatat. You see, the difference here is that the obligations come from two distinct sources, one from the sin that he made, one from his vow, and therefore they're not mixed up, and you can later designate them. Right? So this is a problem. Now. Met vehayu lo ma'ot setumin yelchu liyam hamelach. If he had this money, this $200, and he dies. Once he dies, so now these are superfluous funds because he doesn't need to bring this hatat. And so what are you going to do with the money? You have to throw it into the Dead Sea. Why? Why don't you say, like the previous cases, that you can take the money, it's superfluous money, included in it is a mixture of hatat. Okay, so what? Like before, why not say that we give it as voluntary communal offerings? No, we don't. We only say you could bring it as a voluntary communal offering if it's chatat money mixed in together with other monies that all derive from a single source, a single reason, because the person was a Nazir or because they were a Mesorah. So now they have to bring hatat among other types of sacrifices and this unallocated funds. Then we say, well, not quite specified. But in this case, where it comes from two different sources, two different obligations, and he has a full obligation for hatat and a full obligation for an olah that are not related to each other, and now he has money that he didn't specify, so, well, maybe it's all for olah, maybe it's all for hatat, and therefore you cannot bring communal or gift offerings from it. So that's why Rabbi Yochanan stated the oral tradition as being Nazir and Kinin and things like it, but not every case, not this case where it comes from two different sources of obligation. Good. Now, Amar Rav Ashi, Hadamat meforashin la. Now, the Mishnah distinguished between designated money, allocated money, and unallocated money. So what exactly would be the difference in formulation between the two? So when we said meforashin, that if they're allocated money, then you cannot use it for gift offering, right? That the part that you allocated for hatat has to be thrown into the Dead Sea. Lo tema de'amad elu lechatati ve'elu le'olati ve'elu l'shlamai. He says that's true not only when one said this 100 is for hatat, this $100 is for Allah, this $100 is for shlamim. That for sure is an allocation, and whatever he said for hatat, that $100 has to be thrown into the Dead Sea. Not only that case, ela afilu amar elu lechatati ve'ol olati ve'lishlamai meforashin hen. Even if he had all $300 together, and he said this $300 is for my hatat, my olah, and my shelamim, that's also called allocated. Even though he didn't say this $100 bill and this $100 bill, since he did explicitly list chatat as one of the things that he's going to use it for, so then that's too much of a designation, even though it's not a particular dollar bill that he said will be for that coin, of course, right? A coin that said this will be for chatat, that's still enough of an allocation that is going to have to take a sum of it and throw it into the Dead Sea. He can't use it all for communal offerings. That's one version of Rav Asher. Another version, which goes even farther. Vika de amre amar Rav Asher. La tema adamar elu lechatati o lo lati v'shlamai, ela filu amar elu lechovati harehen kemoforashin. This is not only if he said this $100 bill, this $100 bill. That we already, of course. And not only if he said this $300 altogether is for my chatat, olah, and shlamim. That also is for sure considered designated. But even if he took all $300 and says this is for my obligation, that's also considered allocated. Why? Well, my obligation includes all of his obligations, but the primary obligation is the korban hatat. Right? We saw earlier that, according to one opinion, if you bring the korban hatat and didn't bring the olah yet, you still finished. You completed your nezirut. So, since the chovati is specifically highlights the hatat, so therefore that's also like saying that's enough of a designation that you can't use all the money for communal offerings. That's Rav Asher's chidush. Now Rava has a chidush too. Amar Rava hada amaran ma'ot setumin yipulu lindava im nafla demeh hatat mi benehen harehen kemeforashin. When we said that unallocated money, you could take all of it and use it for voluntary communal offerings, which is good. We don't want to waste money, so it'll all go for these communal offerings. At least we're keeping the mizbeach busy. So that's true. That's true. However, if the money for the hatat, it says literally fell, but it means if it was separated from among the 300, then that's also like allocated. So yeah, we had this 300 and it was unallocated, but then somewhere along the line where someone said, okay, this 100 I'm separating from the full amount, that's going to be for hatat. In that case, the other 200 is considered like it's designated. And since it's designated, the olah money, go buy a korban olah and bring it. And the shelamim money, go bring a korban shelamim and offer it. So as long as you get the hatat out of it, then the rest of it you can use for the regular types of sacrifices. It doesn't have to be for the communal offerings. Good. Tanyat kivated Rava, we have a beraita that supports Rava. אלו לחטאתי והשאר לשאר נזירותי. דמי חטאת ילכו למלך והשאר יביא חציו לעולה וחציו לשלמים ומועלין בכולן ואין מועלין במקצתן. Someone said, this is for my chatat. So he had $300. He takes 100. He says, this 100 will be for my chatat. The rest of it, the rest of the 200, will be for the rest of the things that I have to bring as a nazir. Good. So then that person, let's say, dies. And now this money is superfluous, cannot be used for that because there's no one that needs atonement. So the money that was for hatat, you have to throw that into the Dead Sea. And the rest of the money, you can bring the regular things, half for an olah and half for a shelamim, and that's fine. And if someone would take for himself, you have personal use from that money, then they get me'ilah. If they use all of it, the whole full $200, but not if they use less than half of it. Why? Because korban shelamim, there's no me'ilah for shelamim while the animal is alive. You'd only commit me'ilah for shelamim after you sprinkle the blood. And so now it's in monetary form, so that's certainly before you didn't even buy the animal yet. So if someone uses money for shelamim, for personal use, there's no problem, there's no violation of me'ilah. It's not allowed, but there's no violation of me'ilah, which is much more severe. And so therefore, up to $100, no me'ilah. If he takes for himself $101, up to 200, then that he would be violate me'ilah, because that other 200 is for an olah, and olah you do violate even while the animal is alive. The Braita continues, if he takes $100 and says that this $100 is going to be for my olah, and the rest for the other things, for the chatat and shalamim. So for the olah, that's no problem. He'll bring the korban olah. And if he would use that money for personal benefit, me'ilah, because that's in olah. And the rest of it will go to, since it's unallocated, you can use it for communal offerings. Even though there's chatat mixed into it, that's fine. It's not designated, right? That's the oral tradition. Now, if someone uses takes that money for personal use, all of it, then there is milah, because there is milah for a chatat. But if they take for themselves only part of it, less than 100 of the rest, well, that would be for shilamim, and there's no milah for shilamim. So it's the same law. If he takes more than 101, then he commits me'ilah. So we do see here a support for Rava, because this is the same thing. When you say mixed funds, it doesn't have to be that all three are mixed. As long as two of them are mixed, then it's the same law. And if you are pre-designated the korban, the money for the chatat, then the chatat is separate, and the rest of it, you can, since there's no chatat money in it at all, you can use as the regular offering that the Nazir would have to bring. Okay, good. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav, Lo shanu ela ma'ot, aval behema harehi kimforeshet. Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, has another chidush. This oral tradition that we heard from Rabbi Yochanan, this only applies to money, to cash. That's it. If you have cash and it's undesignated, then it's all mixed together. You can use it all for, and it's superfluous, you can use it all for the communal offering. Aval behema harehi kimforeshet. But if I separated some animals, and let's say I didn't say which animal is going to be for which, but if I'm designating the actual animals, now you can kind of tell which one it's going to be, because each of the animals is different, right? You need a female sheep for the chatat offering, a male sheep for the olah, a ram for the shelamim. So by separating animals, it kind of makes it clear that it's allocated. So then that would be the same as allocate. I can't say, oh, I wanted just the value of the animals, and then I was going to divvy it up differently. Okay, so that would be like meforeshet, and then if it becomes superfluous, you would have to treat each one differently, as the Mishnah already said. Amar Rav Nachman, hada amre behema harei kimforeshet lo shenu ela timima aval ba'alat mum harei kistuma. Oh, no, says, wait a second. I want to add something to what Rav Huna said in the name of Rav. When you said that designating an animal is setting aside animals, it's like I allocated exactly which one's which, even if I didn't say so, because of the type of animal. That's only if they're unblemished and can be sacrificed. So then it's clear that I wanted each one to be for its designated category. But if they were blemished, so then I can't offer it as a sacrifice. If it's blemished, then surely I meant the monetary value of each one. And therefore, it doesn't matter which types of animal I brought. It could have been cows, it could have been rams, it could have been male, female, right? And even if it happens to be that one's a female, and one's a male, and one's a ram, I didn't mean that this is going to be a sacrifice. I just meant the value of it, because it's blemished. And so therefore, this would be like unallocated funds, and then I would be able to sell all the animals I designated, take the money, and donate it all to communal offerings. I don't have to send anything to the Dead Sea. However, naska la, but bars of silver, that is not the same as cash. See, cash has a coin, says on it how much it's worth, so it's easily traded. Whereas a bar of silver, you have to go and you have to weigh it and estimate it, and it takes much more effort. So that's not considered cash, and the oral tradition was only for cash and not for other things that or cash or things that are like cash. See, animals. a blemished animal is almost like cash. You go anywhere and you could trade an animal. But these ingots, they are harder to assess and harder to trade. Okay, but Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak amar afilu naska. Aval sevar shel korot la. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak disagrees and says, you know what? Even the silver bars, that's considered like cash because that is traded. You know what's not traded? What I would consider not something traded? A pile of beams. Because who goes and buys a pile of beams, right? A builder, someone's about to go and build a house, but this is not a cash commodity. Therefore, if I said this pile of beams, I'm going to use for my for my korbanot. Then it becomes superfluous. So then you have to take this pile of beams, and you're going to have to take a third of it and throw it into the Dead Sea. You could take the monetary value, right? You put you redeem it for the monetary value. It has to go into the Dead Sea because part of it was considered allocated for the korban hatat, and so you can't use it all for the communal offering. Okay, we'll stop here because the next part is going to go into a new question about what about birds, and that will continue into the next daf. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.